there's 3 words in here that kind of, that therapeutic relationship has a lot of different components to it. And on a nervous system level, the coherence
Mhm.
is something we're kind of moving towards constantly, to be in coherence with our clients. But the rupture and repair of that is actually super important as well, which we'll talk about in the course. And it's also understanding, like, within that therapeutic relationship, it's not just the acknowledgement and the agreements, it's the attunement,
Mhm.
nervous system to nervous system. We call it right brain to right brain, as well as the commitments that are more left brain to left brain. And the entrainment, the difference between attunement and entrainment.
Which is?
Entrainment is when, when you take your nervous system and you come back into your own body and you start to take care of yourself and you regulate your own nervous system, suddenly your client's nervous system regulates too. Because I think of entrainment as like to train, to model in yourself so that their system can train to yours.
Mhm.
Most of the time as a therapist, we are training to theirs. We're looking at them. We're trying to imagine, how do they feel? What's it like to be them? How is that arm moving? We're kind of focused on them. So we're attuning and training our system to them. Attuning is to focus on, and train means it's like feeling with.
Mm.
And so if we can regulate our system, their system will also mirror us.
Mm.
Another way to describe that, actually, one of the better, maybe better way to describe this is, there's I have to look up where this came from. The study was like looking at 2 different heart cells, and the pulse, that electric pulse that a heart cell will emit. Another one comes nearby, they will actually start to become in coherence, to bounce at the
Mhm.
same time, right?
I've
So
heard
they can
about
be
this.
far, and you can move them far, far away, and you change one, and the other one, if some influence comes in to speed this one up, this one will entrain and speed up too. So by how we regulate ourselves, by calming ourselves down, feeling more spacious, allowing our heart rate to settle, breathing more deeply, we can allow our system to offer a template for our client's nervous system to entrain to.
Mhm.
And so by focusing here and being regulated here, their nervous system will be able to shift. So we don't even have to be client-centered and to have an impact on them.
No, no, but you definitely have to be a little bit, I wouldn't say have to be, but the more that
But
we
you
can
can be.
be,
You can be both.
oh, it's like self-centered. No, therapist-centered care, you know?
Yeah.
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 Allow
Well,
our,
and so if we were just like completely self-centered, like, well, it doesn't even matter what I do, and I'm just going to be here being happy. I'm going to come into the room and I'm going to draw because that makes me happy. And that's, if I'm happy, it's going to heal you. And it's like, why doesn't that work?
yeah,
Because
I
there
wonder
isn't
why.
attunement. Attunement
Right.
is to
Yeah.
actually feel and communicate and be in relationship to,
Right.
so you can sense them, what's happening for them as well.
Mhm.
And we use all of these mirror neuron states to be able to learn about what's going on for them, so that we can bring awareness and education and therapy to where it's needed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that make sense? The difference between
Yeah.
attunement and entrainment? Yeah.
Yeah. It's subtle, but it interplays.
It does.
It's,
They're, when I'm with a client, I think of attunement. I think it is part of that dual awareness is shifting towards them.
mhm.
And then let's say I can feel some tightness in their breath. And so I start to mirror their breathing in my body,
Mm.
as there's, and it's slow and it's pretty subtle, but I can just kind of feel how that little extra tension in the diaphragm, as I'm working with a certain rhythm, that the rhythm that I'm feeling in their body, I match with my body. And then once I've matched that rhythm, I can, in my own body, start to expand it, and follow that rhythm a little bit deeper each time. And because I'm doing that more deeply, their system is mirroring me now. So I first meet them where they're at with attunement, and then with entrainment, I can offer, without forcing, I offer an invitation towards something different.
That's so nice. It reminds me of Chris Vaughn, I think is his name. He's an FBI master negotiator and have gone and have helped hostage situations and navigate hostage situations for years. And he's the guy to talk to about these things. And so he does these courts on negotiating. And that's what he talks about. He's like, if you want to make somebody feel safe, you mirror them, you know, especially, especially in big crisis situations where people's lives are at stake. You calm your voice, you either calm, you know, your voice down, but you still mirror their body. And so that they can feel that attunement, and you entrain them to do what you want them to do in some ways. But that it's not an entrainment, it's not like a manipulative way. It's just, it's not manipulative. It's creating safety with another person by connecting with them and attuning with them. Is am I kind of using these words and properly? It's just, that's kind of what it made me think of.
That's a great example. It's a really great example, kind of an extreme example, but it's very similar. And it yeah, it's interesting because the example of a hostage taker, you know, can bring up a lot of sense of like a perpetrator and like wrong and violence and conflict, but it is kind of the same idea of like taking something that's out of coherence and inviting through attunement. You know, attunement first, and then entrainment is just simply inviting. And it's very powerful, and it is a very holistic way of working, because it doesn't try to disregard or dismiss anything that's happening.
Exactly. And that's what he's saying, is like, this person wants to be seen and wants to be heard. And the more that we can try to understand them, the trust. It's trust is the biggest thing, right? It's so that's, you're creating a relationship with somebody in such an extreme situation, you know. It's
so take that out of like the conflict resolution and bring that into the language of healing, of physiology and anatomy, because we speak about pathologies in the body, you know. And I gave you an example of simply tightness in the breath. You know, it's kind of easy to be like, oh, well, that's just a little bit of anxiety and stress that's just happy to melt away. But we could also, you know, make that more extreme. We have a cancer in the body, or multiple sclerosis, or some type of severe dysregulation in the system somewhere that's really causing a fair amount of pain and dis-ease. And that's, you know, to kind of bring the same approach to that of like attunement and entrainment when we're listening to those tissues and working with it. Then we start to get close to what it might be like when we're dealing with like hostage situations, because the allure to dismiss, disregard, to fight it, to argue, to cut it out, to try to other it in some way, you know, say this doesn't belong. It's really hard, and this is a very challenging piece to. I wouldn't really bring this up in the course, to be honest, because it takes a while to get to that place. But let's say someone has cancer, and how do we in our hearts hold that this belongs to?
Mhm.
And as an invitation back towards coherence. And we live in a culture, especially in this medical system, when it talks about the fight against cancer, and it really wants to be like, this doesn't belong in my body. And that's, there's some real wisdom and health in that as well. But that that can really break down the peace talks that will lead back towards coherence.
Mhm.